Welcome. I'm Ann Baxter with the Foster in Palo Alto, California, and joining me from Tyredworth, Cornwall, England, is Ann Foster. Ann is the wife of Tony Foster and a very great artist in her own right. And she has been a companion of Tony's for many years. They met when they were teenagers in Cornwall. She is also a luminary of Tony's for the Exploring Beauty Watercolour Diaries from the Wild exhibition of Tony's. First, we're going to be talking about her inspiration as the luminary for Tony for painting these beautiful artworks that are behind me. There are 6 series of sunset paintings, all painted in the Maldives over a few years of visits that Ann and Tony made to the Maldives when Tony was drawing underwater studies of the coral reefs there. But today we're focusing above these reefs and particularly on the sunsets in the Maldives. Ann, what drew you to nominate the sunsets of the Maldives? How are they different than other beautiful sunsets you've witnessed? I was thinking you've been to other beautiful parts of the world too, like the Cayman Islands, for instance.
Well, I was thinking about that earlier, and I think the reason they're different is because there were always clouds involved. So the clouds reflect the beautiful colors, and the sea reflects the colors from the clouds. Whereas when we lived in the Cayman Islands, the sky was always clear, and though they were very beautiful, very bright, but they were different. So yeah, very different. And we have beautiful sunsets here too, but there's always things in the way. No, that's another thing. In those kind of sunsets, there's nothing between you and the horizon, and that makes a lot of difference. They look so big.
So one thing, before we get too far, could you describe the Republic of Maldives? I know it's a country situated in the Arabian Sea of the Indian Ocean, southwest of Sri Lanka and India, and it's comprised of a large number of atolls and some separate islands.
Yes, well, it's all islands, and I forget how many hundreds there's. It's in the hundreds, and a certain amount are occupied and lived on, and they would be the ones where they had access to fresh water. But the ones that are the resorts, which the ones we stayed on, resort is a very kind of posh word for them, but they are deliciously beautiful and simple. They're just glorious.
So I noticed these paintings of the sunsets were painted on the Ari Atoll, Villamendu and Villadu. And that area is known for amazing reefs. So did you go there because of the scuba?
Yes, Tony loves that. He loves to dive. I don't do any diving, but I like to scuba, and not scuba, I mean snorkeling. You can just float on the top and float over the reef, and the fish don't notice you. You're just sort of floating along, and fish come right up to you. They're very tame, and especially little things like little squid. And they come up to you and look straight through into your face mask at you, and then they back off and change colour. It's really fabulous. As the sun goes down and the things get a bit darker, you can see all these little silhouettes of islands in the distance that you don't actually see in the daytime. So, and then you think about beyond, you think about beyond. It's quite humbling, isn't it? When you think about how tiny we are on a tiny speck in the ocean.
You and Tony have been a couple since your teens. And when you were just starting out, embarking on your life together, what did you foresee, and how is it so different? I mean, it's hard to imagine the wonderful life you've lived, and I was wondering how it's, reflecting back on it.
We've been so lucky. Yeah, we've had wonderful life together. It's been amazing. But it's such a long time ago. I don't know what we did envisage our lives would be, but I think more conventional in terms of jobs, And you know, although we have our home, we've been here a long time, but we didn't envisage the going off to different places. And so yes, really, really different, really different. Yes.
Thank you, Anne, for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Joining me from Tyredreth, Cornwall, England, is artist explorer Tony Foster. Couple questions for you. First of all, we're wondering, were you surprised that she made this selection, or were you thinking when you asked her to select in a beautiful place from around the world that this would be it?
Well, I was pretty sure that that's what she would choose. We'd been to the Maldives two or three times already, and both absolutely adored it. And Anne's idea of a beautiful place is somewhere like that. She's got a great one for camping in wild and unpleasant, difficult places. She's much more a person who enjoys relaxing on a beautiful beach with palm tree, and so it didn't surprise me at all. No.
And she described your journey to get there. You know, we talked about the location of where it is, but I wanted to throw in a fun fact. I found out that it is apparently the flattest country in the world. So it's neat that you painted there.
I quite believe it.
Yeah, just a few feet above the ocean at the most.
Yeah, I don't suppose it's more than about 15 or 20 feet above the ocean.
Yeah.
Most of it, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So a couple questions for you are the sunset paintings here. There's 6 behind me that are in the exhibition, and they span a few years, 2007, 2009, and 2010. And I was wondering, did you paint every time you were in the Maldives? Did you make a point of painting the sunsets?
I can't remember, to be perfectly honest, but I imagine so, because much to Anne's annoyance, I always insist on taking a sketchbook with me wherever we go, even though I'm supposed to be on holiday. And of course, people think that my entire life is a holiday, but nonetheless, normally speaking, of course, I work pretty hard, and so I probably would take a sketchbook with me, and probably would be struck by the sunsets whenever we went, and so we'd probably do something. Yeah.
And I didn't mention the size of these, but something interesting to note is that these are relatively small. The watercolors themselves, the watercolor on paper portion of the artwork is about 9 or 10 inches square.
Sure.
So I wanted you to talk about the process, because I know the light changes all the time, and you've captured a moment in time so beautifully in these. And can you describe how you did that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you don't have very long, and of course, because I like to catch things as I see them, I wasn't about to do a 4-foot square painting of a sunset, and also, of course, well, you literally have about 20 minutes. You sit down at basically 6:20 in the evening, and the thing is over by 6:45, and so you have that time. You can see whether a good sunset's developing. Not every sunset is a good one. I mean, sometimes there aren't any clouds about, or very few clouds, and so you don't get much of a sunset. But on other days, you can see an absolutely sizzling sunset is going to evolve, and so I would place myself discreetly away from it. All the other people who were sitting drinking gin and tonics and enjoying it, I would be somewhere on my own so that I could concentrate. And you really do have to concentrate, because you have such a limited time. And so you can get down the basics of the thing, and they're all different, of course, every time. Each one is unique. And so you get down the basics immediately, and you have that 20 minutes in order to refine that as much as you possibly can. But it can't be finished in that 20 minutes. You have to simply put down as much as you can get down in that short time, and then you have to do the rest of it from your memory of what happened, and also the structure that you've already got. I would always start with that same shaped piece of paper. I would put the horizon line in before I started the process. I'd draw in the horizon line. I'd know where the sun was going to be, because I sit in the same place every time, and so I would know where the actual when the sun finally disappears over the horizon, I'd know the exact spot where that was going to be. So I'd have that drawn in too, and so I would know the structure of the picture before I started. So all I had to do after that was figure out what the clouds were doing and where the sun was going to strike them as it sank, and what that was going to do to the reflection in the water. And so you get into a kind of rhythm, really, but it is a period of intense concentration for a very short time.
I imagine you must have painted sunsets that you didn't share here, that these are the sunsets that you think are the most successful, but.
Correct, yes. Because sometimes you just can't, sometimes you just mess it up. You can't help it. And sometimes the sunset didn't quite turn out as you hoped it would. And, the shape that the clouds went into weren't particularly aesthetic. And so that didn't work either. And so, there are quite a lot of duds, really.
Yeah. It's the curatorial process afterwards. And then
Yes.
they all have interesting souvenirs. And can you talk about how you selected those and created those?
Yeah, the little clips of fish were actually clipped out of some of the drawings that I used to do underwater. And I would select a particular fish that went particularly nicely with the sunset that I've painted. So if you notice carefully, you'll see that the one, let's think, on your right, for example, you can see that the color in that reflects absolutely the color of the sea at that point. And so I have sheets and sheets of those underwater drawings, and I simply would go through them when I got home and clip out the one that seemed the most appropriate or most aesthetic, I suppose, to go with the painting.
Yes. And then how about the glass tube?
Well, that's to make up some sort of color spectrum that reflected the painting itself, and just to give the sense of the extraordinary beauty to be found in these places.
So I haven't been to the Maldives, but I was thinking, that makes sense that it's crushed shells. It's not the sand, because the sand beaches are like a fine white sand, I would imagine.
They are. They're like talcum powder. I mean, they are beautiful white, gleaming white beaches. Yeah. Can I just say something about the danger that an artist faces if they wish to be taken seriously from painting sunsets? I mean,
yes.
It's pretty much, you could say that any artist that paints sunsets is pretty much, it's the kiss of death for their career. They'll never be taken seriously again by the powers that be in the contemporary art world, because it's thought of as such a cliche and such a romantic cliche that to do such a thing is really, as I say, it's sort of kiss of death, really, for your reputation. And it's almost as if you've sort of gone over. It's like the opposite, I suppose. Going over to the dark side. You suddenly flipped, and he's become a sort of romantic cliche producer of romantic cliches. And but the whole point of my work, in a way, is to respond to what I see in as honest a way as I can. And I don't believe anybody can sit and watch a tropical sunset and not be moved and excited and interested in it. I mean, it would take a flinty-hearted person not to actually respond to what you can see at 6:20 in the Maldives every evening. And and so I thought that, the hell with it. Why shouldn't I respond to this in the most direct possible way I can? I'm not trying to romanticize things. I'm not trying to paint bunches of cliches. But the point about a cliche, I suppose, is it wouldn't be a cliche if there wasn't a germ of truth in it. And it's the fact that there is truth about cliches, because otherwise there wouldn't be cliches. They're accepted things by everybody, a kind of universal truth. And the universal truth in this case is that sunsets are extraordinarily beautiful. And why shouldn't an artist respond to that? So that's me on my soapbox. Why the hell shouldn't I?
Well, you were successful with it. I think the point about you capturing your experience right then helps make it successful. It's not an idea of it or whatever. It's like a specific moment in time, which is great.
Yeah, and of course they're not done from photographs either. That's the other point. And I think there is actually, I think the people who see them understand that sense that they're done, from they have a sense of immediacy about them, which paintings from photographs can never quite capture, I think.
Well, thank you very much, Tony, for your time, and thank you
That's all right.
for Anne also to share her time and thoughts on the sunset in the Maldives.
You're very welcome.